Everyone is a star child, made of stardust and the infinite potential of the universe. This extraordinary fearless something in each of us clamors for freedom from the bonds of fear, conformity, and an ordinary life. Welcome to Dr. Durr's Living in the Sweet Spot, where practical tools and solutions from the intersection of mind-body medicine, science, and spiritual well-being awaken and empower you to live out your infinite potential, to live life in the sweet spot. Many of us long for a wonderful life. You know, the life where maybe we live by the beach, the sun is shining, it's 80 degrees, the water's lapping against the shore and around our ankles and on our feet. And some of us want to climb mountains, and some of us, we want to be able to take care of ourselves and our families well in terms of being financially secure and having financial freedom. But the problem is, frankly, is many of us aren't living that life at all. Many of us are living a life that conforms to somebody else's expectations, someone else's standards. And in living that life of conforming, we struggle, we suffer because it's not the life that's true for us, frankly. Today in our segment, Unapologetically Real, we're going to talk about the freedom from conformity and a mediocre life. I'm your host, Dr. Balin A. Durr, and joining me for that conversation today is someone who I call a goddess, divine feminine energy, Myra Solomon. Hey, goddess, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Dr. Ballin. Thanks so much for this opportunity.
Oh, well, you know, it is absolutely my sheer joy and pleasure to have you with me for this conversation. To have some of the conversations that we have in our private moments that we wanted to say, let's bring this to the platform, right? In the unapologetically real segment.
Yes, yes, yes.
And
And happy
I think that
birthday to
I was going to
you.
say, I think that so embodies you. I have such great admiration for you and your goddess energy, for that amazing wonderfulness that you are. That you exude, and it's just your aura wherever you are, wherever you go.
Oh, thanks so much. That's very kind of you. And hey, I don't know if it's because as I've gotten older and I've given myself permission to just be, and so it just shows up, and who I am is showing up more and more these days. So I'm loving it as well.
Yeah, and so that is awesome. That is awesome, because that's what we're gonna talk about today, right?
Yes,
How to just be, as I like to say, be your unique, wonderful self.
yes, 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 yes.
So so
Absolutely.
to so to share with the folks some of your background and why you're having this conference, why we're having this conversation today, excuse me, in particular, is Myra Solomon is actually the COO for Terracon Design and Construction Company. Her previous background is in human resources and training and development with a Fortune 500 company specializing in telecommunications. And she still consults with medium to small size businesses on various topics spanning a wide spectrum of industries. Currently, her love and commitment is to the next generation of leaders. And to that end, she has spent the last 2 decades mentoring and working with national organizations to give back and to lend her expertise.
Thank you so much. Yep, that about sums it up. That's me.
So yeah, um so of course, just again to share with the audience how you and I met was like 2014.
Yes.
And it was actually at the we call it UFBL, which is the Universal Foundation for Better Living. the national conference that was in Chicago,
Yes.
right? And it's which you're also doing some teaching for, right?
Yes.
So just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I've been I wouldn't say that I'm a preacher's kid or anything of that nature, but I've been around spirituality, church kind of conversations all my life. Sunday school, and I became a Sunday school teacher and things of that nature. And so for 40 years, believe it or not, I attended a Baptist church, was on the board of trustees, all of that, until one day it just didn't make sense. And so I went to a friend of mine's. She made her transition, or people would say she died. And I met this woman who turned out to be the president of UFBL, and my life has been changed ever since. And that's been more than 27 years ago. And so I became licensed under this organization, began to take all of the classes, and then fast forward 20 years later, I'm now teaching those classes to other people.
So what are those teachings, and how do they relate to the conversation that we're going to have today?
Yeah, what it is still spirituality, but is practical spirituality. It's literally making the Bible come to life and taking it off the shelf. And just because you go to church on Sunday and you walk in the parking lot and it's like, what did he say? No, the work is an inside job, and it's work that you have to do. And it has changed my life in so many ways that I'm able to have these authentic conversations with my friends.
Yeah, and so the thing that I would add to that, Goddess Myra, is, for me, of course, and I ended up joining Christ Universal Temple here in Chicago. To me, because it's such a heavy focus on education, and as um, one of my favorite scriptures, Romans 12:2 says, "Be not conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind."
Yes, yes.
That it's the changing my perspective and my understanding, right? Because I have to know before I can understand, in order to be able to change whatever it is that I want to change, in order to create a different result and experience. So to me, that was, one of the things that was really important also, is bringing that level of knowledge and understanding in order to make the change, right?
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, it's okay to have a new thought. I mean, we all started out crawling, and then we learn how to walk, and then we learn how to run. But there's other ways to do things. And so unless you understand it, you can't demonstrate it. You can't.
Correct. Correct. I can't. Let me just say it like this: as a physician, I'm a doctor. My specialty is psychiatry. But don't ask me to do surgery on your leg.
What you talking about, Willis? I can't do that.
Right. And wait a minute. And then don't be surprised if you come up with a limp if you let me do surgery on your leg. Because
Oh
I
my
don't want
God.
to do it.
Right. You're
Right.
absolutely right.
Right. So yeah. So to your point, you got to understand in order to do. So
Yeah.
let's go ahead and jump right in here into the meat of things.
Yes, yes, yes.
Meaning, in terms of, I started off talking about, to me, the real, I think the real difficulty is, there is that part of us that longs to do something meaningful,
Hmm.
something significant, something that matters.
Yes.
However,
Hmm.
many of us struggle to do that, and or don't feel we're doing that, even if we are, or are not doing that. So what what's that all about?
Well, It's funny because I sometimes look at little kids and they're just so innocent and they're willing to say exactly what they see, what they feel. And then somehow they grow up and then somebody tells them, you can't really say that. That's not nice. I mean, it's not like you're being mean or whatever. I mean, if that person is doing this and then they'll be at their parents' house and the parent will hear the phone and says, tell them I'm not here. But they're looking at you.
Hmm.
So over time, we start to tailor our conversations and we start to talk in a way that is going to be acceptable to people. We start to behave in a way that's going to be acceptable. And then over time, as you get older, 50, 30, you go older, and before you know it, you have recreated what has come to your mind really. And when it comes out of your mouth, it's a whole different ballgame.
So you know what? I love that. So to me, as I was listening to you, really what occurred to me is that that in people saying keep it real.
Yeah.
You ain't good enough. You don't know what you're doing. Um, you're a problem. You screw things up, you mess things up. Or the other thing that happens is that, of course, in are being abused, neglected, rejected, we come up with some of those conclusions ourselves. And in doing so, then we end up basically I end up dumbing myself down
Yep.
and um, and then
You
I,
you
we just
you
we,
you
we
did.
just we dumb ourselves down because the stuff that I'm thinking is no longer the truth, right? And then I can't, and then what I'm doing then is limited. What I'm thinking, what I'm doing, how I'm showing up, like you said, is limited, and it's not the truth.
And we start to believe, first of all, like I said, it's an inside job. We begin to move further and further from our intuition, our own belief system, to what we get closer. We start moving outside. We stop trusting ourselves. We stop believing ourselves. We don't realize that some of what people are saying has nothing to do with us. It's them reflecting their inadequacies on us. And we buy it lock, stock, and barrel.
Right. So for me, so here's the thing. Not only they not only, let me say it like this. See this right here?
Yeah.
That water. I can only give you what's in me. So if I've got jamba trauma, mess, distorted think, whatever that is, and my perception, my belief system, or that's everybody's got their own BS, i.e., a belief system,
Yep. Yep.
and then of course, in my encounters with my interactions, I'm just gonna put that on you, right? And I'm also gonna ask you basically to be who I want you to be in order to meet my needs, right?
Pretty
And
much.
that ain't necessarily got squat to do with you
Yep.
in terms of your design and your purpose. But
Right.
I'm going to tell you who you should be, um, and how you should live and how you should act and behave, what things you should be doing and shouldn't be doing based upon my perspective of the truth and who I think you are, and which doesn't necessarily have anything to do with anybody else. And to be specific, like one of the things that I've seen parents do that can be incredibly harmful. I mean, incredibly harmful to the point that it can drive young people to suicide, frankly, is imposing upon them their idea of what their profession is supposed to be. And then they get in these high pressured, they get in these high pressured situations in terms of the academic institutions they're going to, in terms of the companies that they work for, And guess what ends up happening? They end up collapsing from the burden that this isn't true for me, and
Right.
or from the level of difficulties of the environment.
No, that's absolutely true. I have a friend who is from Jamaica, came here to the States and went to University of Florida and became an architect.
Hmm.
He didn't want to be an architect. He was
Hmm.
working with another friend of mine, and the guy kept giving him all kinds of opportunities. And he said, "Man, you're making me look bad. What's going on? Why aren't you more into it?" He said, "In the islands, you cannot really, you had to either be a doctor, lawyer, accountant, or something. So in order for me to be able to leave my home and they feel comfortable enough about me coming to the States, I had to say I wanted to be those things." He really wanted to be a chef. Well, in Jamaica, you can't be no cook. That looks like the lowest level of job you could ever get, and you wouldn't make any money. And so now he has been a chef, James Beard award winning chef for 20 years. And
Hmm.
guess what? A lot of times we don't know that what we want to do is in alignment in some of the things that our parents wanted us to do. In cooking, it's just like architecture. You lay a foundation for the plate and you build on the different flavors and the different things. It's the same. But your family can't see that. And sometimes you go 20, 30 years before you realize who it is that you are, what you love. And that begins that whole conversation of living this mediocre life. And so it's easy for us then to listen to other people because we've bought it. We've seen that movie before. We know how it's going to end. We've actually starred in it a couple of times. We produced it. And so that's just how it is. And until we can break out of that, we can really begin to believe in ourselves and stop that chatter that goes on in our head that says we're not worthy, that we shouldn't be doing this. And maybe those folks are right. And let me just be with a lot more of those people so that they can completely indoctrinate me and make me believe that that's the truth about who it is that I say that I am.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, let's call a spade, right? Which is the society that we live in, the society that we live in, the country that we live in. There's so much promotion about what's true, right, and acceptable that, frankly, doesn't look like a person of color. So if you're African American, or if you're Latino, or if you're Asian, or if you're anything else other than someone who's white, uh, then you're not good enough. You're too fat, you're too skinny, you're too broke. So it's you're too much of something, you're not enough of
Enough
something
of this
else.
one. Yep.
Right. Not enough of something else. And frankly, you don't have enough stuff. You don't have a big enough house. You don't have the luxury car. The again, the professions or the position of prestige and prominence and power. Again, you don't have enough money. There's this perpetual chasing of what you don't have, what you're not good enough at, um, that perpetuates the sense of 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 inadequacy and lack, and to keep chasing it in order to get it. But the carrot is always being moved as you move, so you never get it.
And we live in a society that's a click society. If you are not driving this kind of car, living in this kind of house, wearing these kind of clothes, I mean, we are now indoctrinated, particularly people of color. We somehow feel that to make people think that we should be able to be invited to that social circle, We've got to look like them. We've got to act like them. We've got to carry the things that they carry and do the things that we do. And so we begin to peel away from who it is that we are authentically. Just because you wear a Birkin bag and just because you have a big house and just, I mean, so we, especially as women, especially as Black women, we bear the brunt of a lot of African American woes, if you will.
Yeah, and of course that's again the idea that we're not quite enough, we're not good enough, we're not um and again there was a time in this country where we would be considered to be three-fifths of a human, so we're not even human.
Yes,
So when you control what a man, I remember that when you control, so I tend to kind of paraphrase it. When you control what a man thinks, you never have to worry about what he will do. And if you convince him that he's inadequate, then you don't have to tell him to go to the door. He will go on his own. And
that's
if
right.
there is no door, his very nature will demand
Yes,
one.
yes,
That's a paraphrasing of Carter G. Woodson's quote. And the importance of that is again is that we can never live above our belief, right? If I think I can't go to the moon, I won't try to figure out how to get there. If I
right,
think I can't become a doctor or I'm undeserving, then I won't do that. If I think I'm undeserving of love, then guess what?
right.
I'm going to limit how much I engage in relationship. And if I get one that's really what I want, then guess what? I'm gonna blow it up.
You're going to self sabotage it
Yeah,
because
I'm
you,
gonna
you don't,
blow it up.
we're waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's too good to be true. I mean, we have had these conversations in our head for so long that when something does present itself, because people don't realize that you put that in motion for that to happen. So why is it that you now think that you're not deserving of it or you're not worthy of it? It didn't happen by accident.
Right. So I think that there's two things here. One is there are those thoughts that come from society, right? The thoughts that say this is who you are in terms this is your identity, and then this is all you're capable of. And then there are those thoughts that come from inside my own head, because the brain is designed to give meaning to our experiences in order for us to have some understanding about what it is. And also, it's relevance to my safety. So, as kids, we grow up thinking, when people say the kid thinks they're the center of the world, the center of the universe. So then they tend to make it about there's some, if you mistreat me, if you mistreat me or abandon me or reject me, then there's a tendency to believe a child, for them to believe what's wrong with me, as opposed to recognizing if somebody does something harmful with you, there's nothing wrong with you. The question you need to be asking is what's wrong with them. what's what happened to them that they're now inflicting their pain on me, right?
Yeah.
That's the question. And then we tend to carry that on into adulthood, still saying what's wrong with me, because I still perceive myself like I am like the little one, small, weak, dependent, and vulnerable,
Yeah.
as opposed to again saying, no, there's nothing wrong with me. It's what's wrong with you, or what happened to you that you're inflicting that pain on me. And to bring something back to what you were saying in terms of, people of color in this society, again, we buy into those narratives that say we're not good enough. And let's also acknowledge the obvious, since you and I are here on screen together, right?
Yeah.
That the whole colorism line that exists about being light versus being dark skinned, and the lighter you are having more value, which of course is not true. um
But
you
you
know
you got to know that for yourself, though.
Correct. Correct. And but the difficulty is of course when you're conditioned to think
Yeah.
that, and we're conditioned with those kind of beliefs about who people who we think we are and our possibilities and our purpose, you conditioned from that, frankly, in the womb, from
Yeah.
the womb to the grave.
Yep.
And so then and then of course, you again, as I said, you cannot live above the level of your belief.
Yep.
You just can't. If you think you're good enough, you'll do it. If you think you're not, you won't. If you think you're deserving, you will. If you think you're undeserving, you won't. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
And the other part of it is too, is that we've got to be willing to do a new thing. We've got to be willing to break out of the chains. I'll tell you what I mean. I have 7 aunts.
So hold on, God is Myra. What I want to do is, let's go ahead and take a break,
Okay.
and then when we come back, we're gonna get into that, because we want to get into then, um, as Master Yoda Star Wars says, how do you unlearn what you have learned? Okay,
All right. Let's
all
do
right.
it.
Heaven abounds in you, enlightens, uplifts, inspires, and invites you to live a life that's engaged, joyous, and limitless, the sweet spot of life. Take this journey in oneness. We are and have all that God, the infinite creative source of the universe, is. You are infinite potentiality, and the kingdom of heaven is within you. Heaven abounds in you. Hi, Dr. Bellin Durr here. And before the break, we were talking about you need to think a new thought in order to do a new thing. So, how do you change the thoughts that you think, your perceptions about yourself and your possibilities, so that frankly, so that you can live your best life, so that you can fulfill your potential, so that you can stop living a mediocre life and live an extraordinary life? And again, joining me today is my guest, Myra Solomon. And so, Myra, you know what? There was a part of me that almost wanted to call you doctor.
Lord.
because instead of, because this is such a wealth of information, and frankly transforming, life trajectory changing, life altering, transforming. And so we left off saying, essentially, I think the best way to sum it up again is this: that the thoughts that I think, one, that I've either gotten from somebody else or made up myself about my identity and my purpose and my possibilities, that can't be changed without me willing to make some changes in how I think, which will change what I do. But it's those thoughts that are limited in perspective and understanding, that keep me living a mediocre life,
Right.
right? That keep me from living the life that I long for, that my spirit is saying, hey, go do this, you can do that. That we're not living that life that we that long for, they're not living the extraordinary lives that we're capable of, because we're extraordinary beings at our core and our essence.
Yep.
So, what? Let's get into what do we need to do in order to make that change.
Yeah, because the thoughts you're talking about is those crystallized thoughts that are buried so deep, that have been laying dormant for so many years. And we thought we really had gotten over some of that stuff until
Mhm.
somebody triggers us. And then all of that stuff starts to float back up to the surface. But we've got to be willing to make some changes, even within our own family. Like I was saying before the break, I have 7 aunts.
Mhm.
And I think they all were married for a very short time. And then they spent 50 years, 60 years not being married. And so I didn't have a lot of examples of marriage and all of that, but something within me said I wanted to do something different.
Hmm.
Something within me said that I didn't want to come back to the projects or, the things that I had seen. Because if you always do what you've always done, you're going to always get what you always got. And so I did not want to be the picture of what my aunts was showing me. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to break out. I wanted different exposures. And I made a conscious effort to be with different people so that I can get different experiences, whether they were black, whether they were Hispanic, whether they were Jewish, whatever, even if they were men, to get a different story. Because I had been sold a story that I had bought for so many years, and I was continued to live within the constructs of that story. And so when I was able to just break out and be willing to say, you know what, it stops with me. We're going to do a new thing, that I can now show my cousins behind me something different, so that I
Yeah.
don't have to be the single black woman who won't ever be married and won't get a husband and won't do this and that. But I didn't limit myself by just being married. I was willing and comfortable enough to go to plays by myself, to go to dinner by myself, to do all of those things that I wanted a man to do with me by myself.
So of course, that is one of the things for all of us, right? Is my simple way of saying what you were saying too is that um, if I go to Krispy Kreme to buy donuts,
Right. I expect
that's fine to expect donuts, but don't go to Krispy Kreme to buy groceries. They don't sell groceries. And then I keep getting donuts going, why I'm putting on weight? Why is my
it.
health not good? Why? You know, why is my why am I getting wider? And it's because I'm not making the shift. And I think fundamentally at that core, don't go to Krispy Kreme to buy groceries, right? Go to the grocery store, where that is. Um, although they make delicious donuts, but then you
Right,
say,
right, right.
so the thing too that I think that's important to me is also that I think that we seek the wrong source. I
Mm,
think that frankly, that if I make you the source of my happiness, I'm gonna be unhappy a lot of days. Why?
yeah,
Because you're not gonna be who I want you to be. You're not gonna do what I want you to do when I want you to do it. Right?
mm,
If I make my if I make the weather my source, because I'm here in Chicago right now, and earlier when I checked, it was -1 with it was with minus like 18 with wind chill factor, something like that. If I need the weather to be a certain way all the time, there are going to be a lot of days and times I'm unhappy because it's not going to be what I want it to be and I don't control the weather,
right.
right? So if it's my money, if it's my thighs, if it's my hair, if it's my color, if it's my, you know, if it's my job, if it's my kids, if it's the whatever that I tie my happiness to as the source of my happiness, the source of my joy, the source of my good, guess what? I'm gonna be unhappy a lot of days.
Yeah.
And so again, to bring that back around to then, what is the source of my identity? And for me, the source of my identity is that I am a spiritual being, or as another way I call it is I'm a goddess. Again, God is divine feminine energy. So if that's my source, then that source is eternal. It's constant. It's always. And so I'm it's also represents the best of me, the my best, highest self that is unlimited, unbounded, capable of doing wonderful things that I was designed and purposed to do. There's nothing. It's nothing that I. It's nothing that my divine self can't do that it was designed to do. So where does my belief where does my belief come from about who I am?
Well, like you said, we have recycled thoughts, borrowed thoughts from our family. Sometimes it's cultural. Sometimes it has something to do with other women that you've seen. We think big, but we're afraid to play big because is that now going to make the people who have been working with me make them look bad? I mean, so we've got so many different things at play that we wrestle with on a day-to-day basis, and we're afraid to step out of that and be
Right. So
willing to say that some things are for a season. So rather than drop that person for our better good, we will now contort ourselves to be accommodating to all these different people.
but not only contort ourselves, but climb into the cage.
Yes,
And right, climb into a cage in order to again limit who I am and what I'm capable of doing. And the other thing too, we need to understand, what is that about? Myra, that's about wanting to be accepted.
oh,
That's about wanting to be connected. That's about not being rejected. Because if you are isolated and alone, frankly, that puts you at risk, right? You more at risk of being hurt or taken out when you the lone wolf as opposed to when you part of a pack. So in my desire to be a part of a part of the group, so that I have protection, right, and that I benefit from what you can do that I can't do. There's a whole lot of folks saying, again, you should you doing something other than what this pack does. And the fact that you're doing something other than what this pack does mean it's a problem. It's a problem for us because we don't do that.
right, right. So you got to be willing to, first of all, when you say put yourself in a box, you've already lost. There is no box. Once you see a box, that's a problem. So just recently, I just came back from Jacksonville, and this is football season now, and so there's playoff games. Well, I am one bad crap talker because I know the game, I understand the game, and
And you
so I'm
would,
in
and you
the
from
room.
and you're from Chicago.
Yeah. I'm in the room with like 10 brothers, and I have backed each of them up individually. With my husband sitting on the couch, who's from Jamaica, so his football idea is soccer or cricket or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
And I do it in such a way, like, hey, I take my wins like I take my losses, but I'm talking smack. And so, but the guys, each of them begin to respect me because I know what I'm talking about. I'm not, but at the same time, after the game, I can go back into my feminine energy. I'm not trying to be a man. I don't want nothing I'm that girl that I want to be treated like a lady and all of that other stuff. But I can do, so I think a lot of us, we put ourselves in these boxes because we feel like people are going to be intimidated by us. Well, there are going to be people intimidated by us. You got people intimidated by you. There's nothing
Yes.
you can do about that because
Yeah.
you
You know
will
what?
find your tribe. You will find your tribe. Those people are there for a season and they will go back to the nothingness. I mean, I'm not trying to say that we should dismiss people, but you can't just keep people hanging on and not be willing to grow yourself and stifle yourself and begin to live this mediocre life and conform and contort it. You're not going to be happy.
Right. You're not gonna be happy. And again, like I said, you're gonna be living a mediocre life that you don't want. So one of the things that you said was a few years ago when someone, a friend of mine, it was introduced me to one of his friends, and what he said to me was, he says, "Men find you intimidating." He's like, "You intimidate men." I was like, wait a minute. I was like, "No, I do not." I
Right,
said, I said, I said, really what it is that some men may compare themselves to me and feel that they are lacking or inadequate in certain areas. I said, that's not me doing that to them. That's them doing it to themselves. I said, because I said to, both of them, I said, both of y'all are alphas, as in alpha males, right? They said, yes. I said, are you intimidated by me? No. The other one, are you intimidated? No. I said, so you're making my point. It's not me intimidating you. It's somebody else comparing themselves to me and feeling they're inadequate and therefore feeling intimidated. They're not up to dealing with me.
right.
Right. That's really the issue that we need to consider, because as I tell people, intimidation are specific acts. There's specific acts that I'm doing in order for you to feel threatened. And if I'm not doing that to you, you're doing it to yourself. So,
Absolutely.
so for me, the next question is, then what do we need to do in order for me to be in touch with, and to be in touch with, to identify with, to understand who my true authentic self is, who my, or like I say, my unique wonderful self is, who my sacred self is. What kind of things do we need to do in order to, in order to, to change the narrative and to change the understanding?
We've to thine own self be true. I remember when my son was 13 years old. I was just coming out of
Yeah,
a
Ms. Myra, what's that mean? For some folks that don't necessarily understand what does that
to
mean?
thine own self be true. Like, don't fool yourself. Be honest with yourself. Be
Okay.
willing to say to yourself things that may not necessarily be all that sugar coated or nice or whatever. Just know yourself. And what I was saying is that at 13, my son turned 13, and I had just gotten out of a mentally abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I decided he's 13, he's 6 foot tall. I will now not bring another gentleman into my space because I don't want to put him in a situation where he now has to answer to another guy. And so I
Or
decided,
defend you
right,
from someone,
who,
and
yes,
the potential devastating consequences of that, because we both know that basically can go real sideways,
right. So
and
I
somebody end up seriously hurt and or
Yes,
dead.
yes, yes. So I didn't want to put him into that position, and I did not want to belittle the new partner or man that was coming into my life, saying that I'm a package deal with my son, but now you can't say nothing to him, or I'm gonna be all up on you like water on rice. So that was one part. So I made a conscious decision because, first of all, but you've got to, when I say to thine own self be true, you got to be willing to accept your role in situations. So
Come on now. Come on.
I said, you know what, Myra? You stayed with this dude for 10 years. There were red flags, green flags, yellow flags. There was all kind of flags. But you, until you felt uncomfortable enough, you allowed yourself to deal with all of that. So you can't make it nobody else's problem. You can't run around to all your friends and say he did this, that. No. What role did you play in it, and why were you not big enough to leave the situation? All right, so I decided, okay, I'm going to work on Myra. It ain't even about him. Good riddance. After I cried and Cole, why we got to break up? I can be better. No, I decided to become celibate
Okay.
for 4 years. And
And
I don't know.
what was your thinking behind that? Because although we know there's some folks ain't gonna do that, but go ahead. Why did
Well,
you?
because at this point, like I said, I did not want, I threw myself into things that my son was interested in. I knew that he was going to be graduating in another 3 years. Let him have this moment because, quite honestly, I was so enthralled in this man that there were pieces of my son's life that I can't even remember because I
Wow.
want to be the best woman. Why is it? I've done everything. I've tried A, B, C, all the way to Z. I'm on double letters. What is it that I can do for this man that will make him revere me and not want to be with other people and not talk to me like this and not, I did all of that. And so I took a step back, said I was going to spend some more time with my son and decided I need to work on Myra, who it is that I am. I had to reform my thinking, my ways of being. And so I went on a transformational journey. I spent 10 years in an organization called Landmark Education. Went all the way up to the wisdom course, and that led me to UFBL. I mean, I just worked on myself. They even had me writing letters to him to release him. You don't always have to ask for forgiveness from the person in their face. I released him in a letter. I let all of that stuff go. And I knew that I couldn't do the work that I needed for myself if I was bringing somebody in my life because I was mentally unavailable. I was emotionally unavailable. But I recognized that within myself. I did my work. I did my work and I didn't make it his issue. He did what he did to me because I allowed it to be done to me.
Yes.
Period. End of story.
Right. So I think you make some really wonderful, insightful points. And one, let me acknowledge that there have been periods where, I've been celibate for like 2 years at a time. And I'll be honest with you, actually what happened was in my own journey, you call it to thy own self be true, and I, call it know thyself, right? Is and I mentioned this again in I think it was the last episode I did, that my dear friend, master teacher I lovingly called Master Yoda, he said you need to spend some time looking up at the ceiling, asking life's big questions. And so for me, as I'm also, I've become a psychiatrist, and and I've been on a spiritual journey for a while, but it reaches a point where it really kicks up, and then God starts. I'm having conversations with the Creator,
Mhm.
who's calling me to say, "Come, just come be with me. Just come be, and I can be your everything if you allow me to be." And you think you have something to give up in this, but you have so much to gain. You don't even know. You have no idea. Um, and in the process of working and walking that journey and that path to becoming more than I envisioned, which was becoming more than and doing more than just being a psychiatrist, my spirit was like, we not doing this, engaging in exchanging energies with somebody
Mhm.
when this is not this we ain't on the same, we don't want the same things, and we ain't going the same place. Just keep it
Right.
simple,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And to you to be exchanging energies, being intimate with somebody, because that's exchanging energies,
Right.
right? Your energies affecting you, affecting me, and my energies are affecting them. That you don't want the same things, you ain't going the same place, right? We're not aligned, in other
Yes.
words,
Hello.
then it ain't okay to be doing that,
Yep.
right? So you gonna have to be still, and you gonna have to spend some time growing into who you've always been since you came here. For me, that looks like, because again, I wanted some specifics. for me, again, you mentioned being celibate, and really, again, the purpose behind that is also then for me to focus on me, for me to be still. So it's also, how do I connect with my authentic self, my sacred self, is also by doing meditation, right?
Hmm.
For me, meditation is learning to quiet my mind so I can hear the creator speaking to me, right? How am I going to hear and come to understand what I can't hear and understand because I'm not listening for it? I'm not aware of it. And I'm so busy moving and trying to seek outside of me when the answers have always been within me when I got here. So again, it's the quiet time, it's the meditation, it's prayer, it's whatever things that I need to do to be in communion with the creator. It's actually sometimes, how about pausing, right?
Yep.
Pausing and taking a deep breath. How about pausing and taking a few breaths and doing that throughout the day? How about is working on me to say, not only who am I, what was I before I came here, but also who are you and where were you before you came here? And then saying, the creator says to me, when you get, know, trust in the oneness of everything, then you will understand, will know that you won't go without. And so what does that mean? That at what point do I decide to believe the
Hmm.
creator within me that says, this is who you are. This is what you're capable of doing. And trusting that, because when you trust, then your understanding will come, right?
Yep.
So what is it, of course, and so the other thing I'm doing, of course, is is taking all of the coursework at Christ Universal in order to transform my mind, in order to transform my thinking and my understanding
Yeah, because
about,
it's a connection, everything.
right, about who I am and what's possible for me, right? And fundamentally, am I willing to not conform to who I say I am, or who you say I am, or who somebody else says I am, a mom and my daddy, and this society says I am, and what I can and cannot do? Am I willing to set that aside in order to recognize, what, that not only not only am I a physical expression of the sacred, but every person and everything is an expression of the sacred, filled with the infinite possibilities and potential of the sacred.
Yep. I totally agree. If we can, what they always say in UFL, go to headquarters. It's an inside job. You don't need to ask nobody outside of you. The universe every day conspires to support you. So you need to go to source, go to headquarters. All your answers are there. There are no accidents that we have one mouth and two ears. So we are supposed to listen twice as much. And
Right.
it comes to us. The inspiration is there. God speaks to us every day.
Yes, absolutely. And so we need to be willing to listen. We need to be willing to understand,
Yep.
right? And we need to be willing to trust,
Mm.
right?
Yep.
Then we need to be willing to go, right?
To be
And
obedient.
right, and to go.
Yep.
And part of too of the understanding about who I am as spirit, is as a spiritual being, is understanding that as spirit, my spirit needs hands and feet on which to perform any action on this planet.
Yep.
So one of the things, if I'm going to clear, and I'm be honest with you, if I'm going to clear the mess out of my thinking, my BS, my jacked up, sometimes distorted, twisted, sideways thinking belief
Yep.
system, one of the things too that's required is for me to forgive myself of things that I did, choices that I made when I'm only doing what I know how to do. Because as you said, the model that was before me, that's how you learn how to become a woman, how you learn how to become a mother, how you learn how to become a wife, how you learn how to become a man, a husband, a father. You're copying the examples that were presented before you. Some of it worked, some of it different. So didn't. So I need to be willing to forgive myself for the choices that I made that didn't work
Yep.
and that
You
created
cannot,
mess and chaos.
yeah. You cannot undo what's already been done, but you can show yourself grace. We are so eager to forgive everybody else and put ourselves on the bottom of the list. We have to show our own self grace and give ourselves forgiveness to be able to get up, dust ourselves off, and go at it again, full throttle.
So one of the ways I encourage people to do that, both for them, because we get into this last little minute or so, is that understand that if you grow a hammer is a hammer, but if you grow up in a family of carpenters, you learn to use a hammer to build. But if you grow up in a family of burglars, you use a hammer to break and enter. And if it's in, and so both in forgiving yourself and forgiving others, understand that you got the tools from your families and the
Yes,
society that you have, and you learn to use them in the only way you knew how to use them until you learn a different way.
I
So
like that.
it's important to forgive others, and it's
Yes,
important to forgive you
yes.
for using the tools in the only way you knew how. How can they connect with you?
I'm on Facebook, and I guess underneath this, you can give them my handles. I'm on Facebook, Myra Solomon. I'm always out there putting out messages. Um, I'm on Instagram. Those kinds. Those are the only two social media platforms I'm at. But I have an email address, and I freely give somebody my email address if they want to talk, more. Because this has been a great
Okay.
conversation. Go ahead, Dr. Ballin. Thank you so much for this opportunity. OMG. I know we covered a lot of stuff today, but I thought it was good.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, again, thank you, Goddess Myra. Like I said, I hope folks get a chance to connect with you because you emanate that divine feminine sacred energy. So, so with that, we're going to push the pause button. And I thank you for being your unique, wonderful self. And we'll pick this up another time.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone. Happy New You.
So I hope you have learned some things, heard some things that awaken and empower you to free yourself from the bonds of conformity and a mediocre life. That you have heard some things that, again, awaken and empower you to live life in the sweet spot. In the sweet spot. I'm your host, Dr. Ballin Durr, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us today in the sweet spot. Share, follow, and like us on social media. To learn more, please visit balinadurmd.com, spelled BALINADURRMD.com. Join us next week, and remember, when you heal your mind, all things are possible.